The sky was dark, heavy with thick gray clouds, and rain poured down like the heavens were crying. Streets were soaked, gutters overflowing, and people rushed by holding umbrellas trying to avoid getting wet. It was one of those days when most people just wanted to stay indoors, warm and dry, but not Daniel. He was only 18 years old and already working long shifts at the old gas station on the corner of Maple and 6th. It wasn't a fancy job. The roof leaked in 3 places, the heater barely worked, and most customers didn't even say hello. But Daniel didn't complain. He needed the job. His mom was sick and unable to work, and they were barely getting by. Every dollar counted. That afternoon, Daniel stood by the window of the gas station store watching the rain. His jacket was thin, his shoes had holes, and his socks were soaked. But he smiled anyway, sipping the last bit of warm tea he had brought from home in an old thermos. A loud splash broke his thoughts. He looked out and saw a man across the street, soaked from head to toe, slowly walking in the rain with no umbrella or coat. The man looked old, maybe in his 60s or 70s, with a long white beard and wrinkled face. His clothes were torn, and his shoes looked like they were about to fall apart. The man slowly stepped into the gas station store, water dripping from his clothes, and stood near the entrance. His body was shaking from the cold. Other customers took one look and stepped away. Some even covered their noses. One man whispered, "He smells like garbage," while another said, "Probably just another useless drunk." Daniel saw everything. Instead of turning away like the others, he walked over to the old man with a gentle smile. "Sir," he said, "you look freezing. Come sit down here." He pulled out a small stool from behind the counter and placed it near the heater, which gave off just a little warmth. The old man looked surprised. "Are you sure?" he asked in a shaky voice. "Of course," Daniel replied, helping him sit. "Wait right here." Daniel went to the back and poured the last of his tea into a clean paper cup. It wasn't much, but it was warm. He grabbed half of his sandwich from the lunchbox he had saved for dinner, just a simple peanut butter sandwich, and brought it to the man. "Here, sir. Drink this, and eat something." The old man stared at him. His eyes looked like they were holding back tears. "Why are you helping me?" the man asked softly. Daniel shrugged. "Because you need it." "That's reason enough." The man took the cup with both hands, trying not to spill it from the shivering. He sipped it slowly, his hands finally stopping their shaking. Then he looked at the sandwich, still unsure. "Eat it," Daniel smiled. "It's not much, but it'll help." The old man took a bite, and for a moment his eyes closed like he hadn't tasted food in days. He chewed slowly, every bite seeming to bring life back to his tired face. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside, the boy and the old man sat quietly. Daniel went back to his counter, but he kept looking over, just making sure the man was okay. A woman walked in and saw the old man. She made a face and whispered to Daniel, "Why let him sit in here? He's dirty. He might scare customers away." Daniel looked at her politely but firmly. "He's a person, just like you and me." The woman scoffed and walked out. Daniel didn't care. He had made up his mind. His mother had always taught him to treat everyone with respect, no matter their clothes, money, or smell. Minutes passed. The man slowly finished the sandwich and tea. Then he stood up, his knees shaking. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small wet coin, probably all he had, and tried to hand it to Daniel. "No, no," Daniel said, pushing his hand back gently. "Keep it, sir. Maybe you'll need it later." The man looked at him, eyes filled with emotion. "You're a good boy," he said. "Not many like you anymore." Daniel gave him a soft smile. "Take care of yourself. Stay dry." The man started to walk toward the door, then paused. He turned around, his eyes locking with Daniel's. "I won't forget you," he said, "no matter what." And just like that, he stepped out into the rain and disappeared. Daniel stood there watching as the man's figure faded into the fog and the storm. He didn't know who the man was. He didn't know where he had come from or where he was going. But deep inside, Daniel felt peaceful, like he had done something right, something good. He picked up the empty cup and napkin, threw them in the trash, and went back to work. The rest of the day passed like normal, filling gas tanks, selling snacks, cleaning the floors. But a quiet warmth stayed in Daniel's chest the whole time. That night after work, he walked home through the rain with no umbrella. His hoodie was gone. He had given it to the old man, but he didn't feel cold. He reached home and opened the door. His mother, thin and tired-looking, was lying on the couch, coughing lightly. Daniel smiled, sat next to her, and placed a warm hand on hers. "You're soaked," she said, concerned. "Yeah." He laughed softly. "Gave my hoodie to someone who needed it more." She looked at him, eyes full of love. "You're just like your father," she whispered. "Always helping others." Daniel didn't reply. He just held her hand tighter and stared at the ceiling. He had no idea, no clue, that the man he helped today would change his life forever. The next morning, the sun peeked through the clouds and the rain had finally stopped. The streets were still wet, but the gray skies had softened into a dull blue. Life in the small town returned to normal. People hurried to work, children rushed to school, and the gas station on Maple and 6th opened right on time. Daniel arrived early as usual. His socks were still a little damp from yesterday's rain, and he had to borrow an old hoodie from his neighbor because he didn't have another one. But he didn't mind. He was thinking about the old man. He looked around, hoping to see that tired figure again. Maybe the man would return for more tea. Maybe he needed breakfast, but there was no sign of him. Not in the alley beside the gas station, not across the street, not even near the trash bins behind the store, where some homeless people sometimes looked for bottles or leftovers. The man was gone. Daniel asked the newspaper guy if he'd seen the old man from the day before. "Who? The one in the ripped coat?" the vendor asked. "Yeah, the one I gave tea to," Daniel replied. "Nope. Haven't seen him," the man said, shaking his head. "Probably moved on." Daniel nodded, but something felt odd. The old man had looked like he had nowhere else to go. And his words, "I won't forget you." Daniel thought about it the whole day. Customers came and went. Cars honked, coins exchanged hands, but in the back of his mind, Daniel was stuck on one thing. Where did the man go? That night, he told his mom everything while they ate dinner. He looked homeless, Daniel said, but there was something in his eyes, like he had a story he wasn't telling. His mother smiled as she sipped her soup. "Sometimes people carry their whole lives in silence," she said, "and sometimes a single act of kindness opens their heart." Daniel nodded. "I just hope he's okay." What Daniel didn't know was this. That same night, inside a luxurious black SUV parked 3 blocks away from the gas station, the old man wasn't wearing ragged clothes anymore. He was dressed in a warm, clean sweater, sipping expensive coffee and staring at the gas station through tinted windows. His real name was Charles Everett. Owner of a global business empire, net worth $3.4 billion. He wasn't poor. He wasn't lost. He wasn't forgotten. He was testing the world. Every year, Charles would vanish from his mansion, hide his identity, and walk among ordinary people. He wore rags, lived in shelters, and sometimes slept on benches. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to see something real. Real kindness, real hearts, real people. Most people ignored him. Some were rude. Others walked away. But Daniel gave him warmth, tea, a sandwich, and something more, respect. "Did you find out more about him?" Charles asked his assistant seated next to him. "Yes, sir," she replied, handing him a file. "His name is Daniel Carter, 18, lives with his mother, no father. He works here part-time, studies at night school, and he's saving for college." Charles opened the file. He saw a photo of Daniel smiling while cleaning the gas station floor. "Any records?" "Nothing bad. No trouble with the law, in fact." She flipped another page. "He volunteers at the community center on weekends. And he's donated small amounts to the local orphanage." Charles raised his eyebrows. "With what money?" "His tips, sir." Charles closed the file slowly. He took a deep breath and leaned back in his seat. "I think I found him," he whispered. The next few days, Charles watched quietly from afar. He wanted to be sure. One morning, he saw Daniel helping a pregnant woman carry groceries to her car. The next day, he saw him fix a kid's bicycle for free. Another night, Daniel offered his gloves to a street musician who had none. Again and again. Without knowing he was being watched. Daniel was kind, genuine, upright. Charles made a decision. "I want to meet him again," he said to his assistant. "In what way, sir?" she asked. Charles paused, thinking. Not as a stranger this time, as myself. But Charles didn't want to just walk in and shock the boy. He wanted to do it the right way. A meaningful way. Something that would not just reward Daniel, but change his life. He went home to his estate and called a team of planners, lawyers, and media advisors. I want to offer him a scholarship, he told them. I want to pay for his education. Cover his mom's treatment. Give him a future. The advisors were stunned. Sir, are you sure? This is a big step, Charles smiled. I've spent millions on people who only care about money. This boy gave me his only sandwich. His only hoodie. He didn't even know who I was. Back at the gas station, Daniel continued his work, unaware of the storm his kindness had started. He still thought about the old man sometimes. Every time it rained, he looked outside, half hoping the man would return. But there was still no sign. One afternoon, 3 days later, Daniel found something in the mailbox at home. A small white envelope, no return address, no stamp. Just his name, Daniel Carter, written in golden ink. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single card, firm and elegant, with gold lettering. No logo, no company name, only one line. You changed my life. Let me change yours. And beneath it, a phone number. Daniel stared at it. He showed it to his mom. Maybe it's from the old man, he said softly. His mom nodded. Call it. Daniel hesitated. What if it's a joke? His mom smiled. Then laugh. But if it's not, don't miss the chance. The next morning, Daniel dialed the number with shaky fingers. A soft female voice answered. Hello. This is Mr. Everett's office. You must be Daniel Carter? Daniel was stunned. Yes, How do you know my name? We've been expecting your call, she said kindly. Mr. Everett would like to meet you. He's arranged transportation for you this evening. You'll find a car waiting outside your home at 6 p.m. Daniel blinked. Wait, who is Mr. Everett? You'll find out soon, the woman replied. The call ended. Daniel stood there frozen, the phone still in his hand. His mother looked at him. Well, he looked at her with wide eyes. I think something big is about to happen. The city was glowing in gold and glass as the black luxury car rolled down the streets toward one of the tallest buildings. Inside the car, Daniel Carter sat quietly, staring out the window, his heart racing like a drum in his chest. He wasn't used to this kind of life just a few days ago. He was sweeping floors, helping customers with change, and saving coins for his mother's medicine. Now he was being driven to meet a man named Mr. Everett, a complete mystery whose letter had said, You changed my life. Let me change yours. He wore his cleanest clothes, black jeans, a white shirt, and borrowed shoes from his neighbor. His hands kept brushing his knees nervously. His mom had hugged him before he left and whispered, Be yourself. That's enough. Daniel held on to those words. The car finally stopped in front of a massive glass building. The doorman opened the door and greeted him by name. Like Daniel was someone important, Mr. Carter. Please follow me. A tall woman in a blue suit said politely. He followed her through a marble lobby, past elevators with gold trim into the very top floor. The hallway was silent. Everything was spotless. At the end of the hall stood 2 large wooden doors. The woman knocked once. A voice inside said, Send him in. Daniel stepped into a huge office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind a large desk stood a tall, clean-shaven man in a dark gray suit. His silver hair was combed back and his eyes were the same kind Daniel remembered. From the gas station, Daniel froze. The man smiled warmly. Yes, I'm the man you gave your sandwich to. And your hoodie. Daniel's jaw dropped. But you were homeless. I only looked that way, the man interrupted. My name is Charles Everett. I'm not poor. I'm not lost. I was testing the world. And you passed. Daniel took a shaky breath. Why? He whispered. Charles walked around the desk and sat in a leather chair across from Daniel. Let me tell you a story, he said. Years ago, Charles had everything, money, power, a mansion on the hill. But one day his wife passed away from cancer. She had been the kindest person he ever knew. After losing her, he felt surrounded by fake smiles and greedy hands. People treated me like a wallet, Charles said. Not a person. He started dressing as a beggar and walking the streets searching for real hearts like his wife had. I found few, he admitted. Most people looked away or insulted me. But you, he leaned forward, you gave me warmth. You gave me food. You didn't know who I was, but you treated me with dignity. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. Charles smiled. I sent my team to learn about you. That's what I want to share with you today. He clapped twice. A side door opened. A younger man in glasses walked in holding a tablet. Daniel, Charles said kindly, I want you to know what we discovered. Not to invade your life, but to understand how I can help you. Daniel nodded slowly. The man with the tablet spoke. You live in a small rental house with your mother. You work part-time at the gas station. You take night classes at a local college. Your mother has a heart condition and needs better treatment. Daniel's face turned red. He felt exposed. Charles noticed and raised a hand. We're not here to judge, he said softly. We're here to admire. Because in spite of all that, you give. The assistant continued. Over the past year, Daniel donated nearly $150 from his tips to a local children's home. He's helped fix neighbors' bikes for free. He volunteers twice a month at the community kitchen. Daniel looked down. I try to do what's right. Charles nodded, his voice gentle. And that's exactly why I believe you deserve more. He stood up and walked to the window. Daniel, how would you feel if I offered to pay for your full education? Any university you want, Daniel blinked. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Charles smiled. I'll also pay for your mother's treatment, he added. Private care. The best doctors. Tears started building in Daniel's eyes. But I can't pay you back, he whispered. I'm not asking you to, Charles replied. I'm asking you to live a good life. That's the only repayment I want. For a moment, the room was silent. Daniel slowly stood up. I don't understand, he said honestly. Why me? Why not someone smarter, richer, stronger? Charles walked closer. Because when you had nothing, you still gave. You didn't need a reason to be kind. That's rare. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. My wife once told me, if you find a good soul, help them shine. And I think you're one of the best I've ever met. Later that evening, back in the car, Daniel was quiet. The city lights blurred outside the window as his heart swam with emotions. He thought of his mother, how she always told him to be honest, respectful, kind. He remembered the nights when he went hungry so she could eat. He remembered being laughed at for giving coins to strangers. And now, a billionaire had watched him, studied him, chosen him not for fame, not for skills, but for his heart. When he got home, his mother was waiting on the porch with her shawl around her shoulders. Daniel stepped out of the car, still shaking. His mom ran to him. What happened? Tell me. Daniel hugged her tightly. Mama, he whispered, our lives are about to change. Over the next few days, official letters arrived. One from a top university, accepting Daniel with a full scholarship funded by the Everett Foundation. Another from a private hospital, scheduling his mother's treatment under VIP care. Daniel's name was never revealed to the public. But behind closed doors, Charles told his story to every executive he met. This boy gave me tea and a sandwich, he'd say. I gave him money, but he gave me hope. The morning air was cool and fresh. A light breeze moved through the small front yard where Daniel sat beside his mother. She was wrapped in a warm shawl, smiling faintly, looking healthier than she had in weeks. The change in her face was already noticeable. Her skin had a glow and her eyes looked rested. Daniel held her hand. It had been 3 days since his life took a turn he never expected. Since meeting Charles Everett, the man he once thought was just an old stranger and finding out he was actually a billionaire who wanted to change his life forever. But Daniel still woke up every day wondering if it was real. The memories felt like a dream. Could someone's life really change so fast just from one small act of kindness? He reached into the mailbox expecting bills or cheap advertisements. Instead, he found a thick cream-colored envelope. His name was written in neat gold ink. Mr. Daniel Carter. He frowned and turned it over. No return address. He opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, but not just any letter. The paper felt expensive and the handwriting was elegant. A faint scent of old books and soft cologne came from the envelope. Daniel read the first line aloud. Your kindness was the spark. Let this be the fire that builds your future. Below was a printed invitation to a private reception at the Marlowe Hotel, the most luxurious building in the city. Daniel stared at the card. Who sent this? His mom asked. He shook his head slowly. I don't know, but I think it's from Mr. Everett. His mother's eyes sparkled. Are you going? Daniel hesitated. He didn't have a suit. He didn't even own a tie. The fanciest clothes he had were a button-up shirt with one missing button and black pants from a second-hand store. But his mother placed her hand over his. "You don't need fancy clothes, son. You've already proven your worth." That evening, something else surprising happened. A black car pulled up to their house again. This time, a delivery man stepped out holding a garment bag. "Delivery for Mr. Daniel Carter," he said with a smile. Daniel took it and brought it inside. When he opened it, he found a perfectly tailored navy blue suit with a matching tie, a white shirt, and even polished shoes in his exact size. Pinned to the collar was a small note. "Wear this proudly." "You've earned it," Daniel's mother gasped. "It's beautiful," Daniel nodded, overwhelmed. "Too beautiful for someone like me." His mother looked at him with that same gentle expression she always had. "Don't say that. You helped a man with nothing but your heart. That makes you more than worthy." That night, Daniel stood in front of the mirror. For the first time in his life, he didn't look like the boy who swept floors at a gas station. He looked like someone with a future, someone with strength, someone who mattered. The car picked him up right on time. It was sleek and silent, and the driver treated Daniel with respect like he was someone important. As they drove toward the hotel, Daniel looked out the window at the city lights. Everything seemed to glow brighter tonight. When the car stopped, he stepped out in front of the Marlowe Hotel, where valets in white gloves opened the golden doors for him. People in suits and gowns moved around the grand lobby. Chandeliers sparkled like stars above them. Daniel took a deep breath and walked in. Inside the ballroom, music played softly. Waiters moved with silver trays. People spoke in low voices, sipping drinks and admiring the giant fountain in the center of the room. Daniel felt out of place at first, but before he could retreat, a woman in a green dress approached him with a kind smile. "You must be Daniel," she said warmly. "We've been waiting for you." She led him through the room, past polished marble columns to a quiet corner where a man stood with his back turned, looking out the window. The man turned. It was Charles Everett, this time dressed in a simple black suit. He looked calm and welcoming. "Daniel," he said, stepping forward. "I'm so glad you came." Daniel nodded shyly. "Thank you, sir, for everything." Charles gestured to a nearby chair, and they sat across from each other. "You've had a few days to think," Charles said. "How do you feel?" Daniel took a breath. "Honestly, still confused. Still wondering if this is all a dream." Charles smiled. "I know how that feels. I felt it too when someone once gave me a chance. A long time ago, I was just a boy with nothing but a dream. One kind man changed my life forever. Now I want to do the same for you." Daniel looked at him with wide eyes. "You weren't always rich?" Charles shook his head. "I was poor. I cleaned hotel rooms, washed dishes, slept in my car sometimes, but someone saw my honesty, saw my drive, and believed in me, just like I believe in you." Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. "I just did what anyone should have done. Help someone in need." Charles leaned closer. "Most people don't. That's what makes you rare. That's what makes you important." Then Charles did something unexpected. He stood and tapped a glass. The soft music stopped. Everyone in the room turned toward him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice strong and clear, "I'd like you to meet someone very special tonight." He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "This young man gave me a warm drink and food when I looked like nothing but a poor old man. But more than that, he gave me dignity." Whispers echoed in the room. People began recognizing Daniel's face. He didn't know who I was. He didn't care. He helped me anyway. That kind of heart is rare, and that kind of heart deserves the world. The room erupted in applause. Daniel's face turned red, but he stood tall. He wasn't embarrassed. He was proud. Later that night, Daniel stepped outside onto the hotel balcony. The cool wind brushed his face as he looked over the city. Charles joined him, holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you'd want the same drink you gave me that day." He smiled, handing one to Daniel. Daniel took it gratefully. "It's still my favorite." They stood in silence for a moment, sipping tea like old friends. "I'm going to make sure you get the best education," Charles said. "Not just school. Life lessons, business, travel, and kindness, always kindness." Daniel nodded. "I won't let you down." Charles placed a hand on his shoulder again. "I know you won't." When Daniel returned home that night, His mother was waiting by the window. He stepped in, still in the suit, still holding the teacup. She smiled through her tears. "You look like your father tonight." Daniel hugged her tight. "No," he said softly. "I look like me, finally." The next morning, Daniel woke up before sunrise. The events of the previous night still spun through his mind like a dream. The shimmering ballroom, the applause, Charles Everett's warm smile, and the strangers who shook his hand as if he were someone important. It all felt surreal. He looked around his small room with the peeling paint and the worn-out calendar on the wall. The contrast between last night's luxury and his reality was almost too much to believe. But there, hanging on the back of the door, was the blue suit, the same one Charles had gifted him. And beside it, resting on the table, was a note that read, "The world is watching you now, Daniel. Be proud of who you are." See, Daniel picked it up and smiled. He still didn't fully understand why Charles had chosen him, but the feeling inside his chest that something big was beginning was real. Later that day, Daniel received a call. "Mr. Everett would like to see you again," the assistant said gently. "He has something important to share." An hour later, the same black car arrived. Daniel wore the suit again, this time without hesitation. He felt more confident, more grounded, even if he didn't have all the answers yet. The drive wasn't to the hotel this time. It was to the Everett Foundation headquarters, a glass and steel tower that rose above the city skyline. The kind of building Daniel used to pass by on buses, wondering what life looked like inside. Now he was walking through its doors. Charles was already waiting in his private office, standing near a long digital screen on the wall. "Daniel," he said with a smile, "today isn't about gifts. Today's about truth." Daniel nodded, curious. Charles clicked a remote and the screen lit up. Photos appeared, snapshots of Daniel from different days. One where he gave his sandwich to the old man. One where he picked up trash outside the gas station. Another where he helped a child tie his shoes. All taken without Daniel ever noticing. Daniel's eyes widened. "You took these?" Charles nodded. "I didn't just want to reward a moment. I wanted to understand your life." The screen changed again. A short video clip played. It was from a security camera. Daniel was outside the gas station, taking off his hoodie and wrapping it around Charles, who had pretended to be freezing and poor. "Do you know how many people walked past me that day?" Charles asked softly. 17. Some laughed. Some turned their backs. Only one person offered help. And that person was you. Daniel looked down, overwhelmed. "I didn't do it to be watched. I just couldn't let you suffer." "And that," Charles said, "is exactly why I chose you." Then came the big reveal. Charles walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a black folder. Inside were papers, photos, and a shiny gold card. He placed them gently on the table. "I want you to read this," he said. Daniel opened the folder. At the top was a letter, signed, sealed, and official. It was an invitation to become a youth ambassador for the Everett Foundation. Below that was a document offering Daniel a full scholarship to any university in the world, including tuition, housing and travel, and finally, the gold card. His name was printed on it. Daniel Carter Special Member, Everett, Initiative for Global Kindness. Daniel's hands trembled as he held the card. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Charles placed a hand on his shoulder. "Kindness doesn't ask who deserves it. It simply gives. And you've given more than you realize." Daniel still had questions. "Why are you doing this for me?" Charles looked out the window for a moment, thinking. "When I was 17, he began, I was working in a hotel kitchen. One night I was late. I had no shoes. My manager was about to fire me, until one guest stepped in and offered to help. That man was a stranger. But he gave me shoes, paid for my school, and told me, 'One day pass it on.'" Charles turned to Daniel with emotion in his eyes. "I've waited 30 years to pass it on. And now it's your turn to carry the flame." Daniel sat in silence, the weight of those words sinking deep into his heart. "I'll do it," he said. "Not just for the scholarship. I'll do it to help others too." Charles smiled proudly. "That's all I ever wanted." For the next few hours, Charles gave Daniel a tour of the building. They visited the planning room, where teams worked on humanitarian projects. They walked through a wall of photos showing children helped, schools built, families fed, all through the kindness mission Charles had started years ago. Then, they reached the media room. Charles gestured to the giant screen. Your story. We want to share it. Not to make you famous, but to inspire millions. Daniel looked at the screen, which now displayed a video titled, The Boy Who Gave His Hoodie, A Billionaire's Journey to Pay It Forward. Daniel paused. What if people think it's fake? What if they laugh? Charles placed a hand on his back. Some will, but many will remember. And maybe they'll help someone tomorrow because of what you did. When Daniel returned home that evening, he sat quietly in the living room with his mother. He told her everything. She didn't cry this time. She simply smiled. I knew your heart would take you places, she said, touching his cheek. Now the world knows it too. Daniel looked around their small house, same cracked floor, same creaky door, same old curtains, but everything felt new. Not because of money. Not because of fame, because his purpose had changed. That night he couldn't sleep. So he sat by the window writing in his notebook. He wrote, Kindness is a seed. You plant it without knowing what it will grow into. I planted mine on a rainy day, and it turned into a forest. He closed the notebook and looked up at the stars. For the first time in his life, Daniel believed his story was only just beginning. The sun peeked through the curtains as Daniel opened his eyes. It was still early, but he couldn't sleep anymore. His mind was full, but not with worry. This time, it was excitement. Today was the start of something new. Today, Daniel was going to university. Not just any school, but one of the best in the country, fully funded by the Everett Foundation. Everything, tuition, books, housing, even a laptop, had been provided. He stepped out of bed, looked around the small room that had been his whole world for years, and felt a quiet warmth. The cracked mirror, the faded calendar, and even the wobbly chair, they were part of his story. But now it was time for the next page. His mother was already up, sitting by the kitchen table with a cup of tea. She wore a soft smile. You didn't sleep much, she said. Daniel grinned. I was too excited. She reached over and held his hand. I'm proud of you, Daniel. Not because you're going to university, but because even with nothing, you always gave. That's what made all of this happen. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. I'm going to make you proud every single day. You already have, she whispered. That afternoon, a sleek silver car arrived to take Daniel to the university campus. But before leaving, he stopped by the gas station where he used to work. The owner, Mr. Lopez, was outside adjusting a sign when Daniel approached in his neat clothes and confident posture. Daniel, Mr. Lopez called out, eyes widening. You look like a businessman. Daniel laughed. Not yet. Just a student for now. You're going places, kid, Mr. Lopez said proudly, clapping his back. Don't forget about us little folks. Daniel looked around the old station, with its leaky roof and faded paint. I could never forget where I came from, he said. He left a thank you card and an envelope on the counter. Inside the envelope was enough money to fix the roof and buy new equipment. I owe this place a lot, he told the cashier. This was my training ground. The university campus was massive, full of glass buildings, green gardens, and students from all over the world. Daniel checked into his dorm room. It wasn't fancy, but to him it felt like a palace. A real desk, clean white walls, a soft bed, his own closet. A small note had been left on the pillow. The world is yours now. Use your heart to lead. CE classes started a week later. Daniel enrolled in business ethics, economics, public speaking, and nonprofit management, subjects he had never imagined studying. At first, he felt out of place. Most of the students had come from wealthy families. They wore branded clothes and talked about vacations in Europe, but Daniel didn't let it bother him. He wasn't here to compare. He was here to learn. Every week he called his mom. She always asked the same thing. Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping well? And always ended with stay kind. He also stayed in touch with Charles Everett, who continued to mentor him. Every month they met for tea at a quiet cafe near the city center. During one meeting, Charles handed Daniel a thick folder. This, Charles said, is your project. Daniel opened it and saw the words, The Warm Hoodie Initiative. You once gave me your hoodie, Charles explained. That simple act saved me from more than just the cold. I want to help you build something from that kindness. Together, they designed a project to provide warm clothes, food, and job support to the homeless. Not just handing out donations, but building trust, offering dignity, and guiding people toward a better life. Daniel poured his heart into it. At the university, he gathered volunteers. They raised funds, collected clothes, partnered with shelters, and started setting up mobile help stations in different neighborhoods. Daniel spoke at events, sometimes with shaking hands, but always with clear words. He didn't speak like a rich man's son. He spoke like someone who had been there, who had walked in wet shoes, who had worried about dinner, who had felt forgotten, and people listened. One evening, after giving a speech at a student charity gala, Daniel was approached by a young girl in the crowd. She looked no older than 16. "My brother used to live on the streets," she said softly. "Your hoodie project helped him find work. He's doing better now. Thank you." Daniel's throat tightened. That night he called Charles. I finally understand what you meant," he said. Charles replied with pride in his voice. "Yes, this is the ripple effect of one small act." Meanwhile, his mother's health had improved a lot. Thanks to the private doctors and treatment arranged by Charles, she was walking again, cooking small meals, and even gardening in the backyard. She told neighbors about her son, how he once gave a stranger his lunch and jacket and ended up changing lives. Some didn't believe. Others were inspired, but she didn't care. She knew the truth, and the truth was more powerful than any story. One weekend, Daniel returned home. The house looked a little brighter. The windows were fixed. A new heater had been installed. His mother met him at the door with open arms. "You've grown taller," she said, smiling. He laughed, maybe just standing straighter now. They sat on the porch and watched the sunset. Daniel told her everything. The classes, the hoodie project, the girl at the event. "I feel like I've found my place," he said. His mother leaned her head on his shoulder. "You've always had it," she whispered. "You just didn't know it yet." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat at the desk in his childhood room, writing again. When you give expecting nothing, the world sometimes gives back everything. But more than that, it gives you a voice, a purpose, a reason to keep walking forward. He closed the notebook and looked at the stars once more. From a gas station, to a billionaire's heart, to building his own legacy, this was more than a new chapter. It was the beginning of a mission. Years had passed since that rainy day at the gas station. The world had changed, and so had Daniel Carter, but one thing stayed the same: his heart. Now 26 years old, Daniel stood on a large stage, wearing a dark gray suit, holding a microphone in one hand and a memory in the other. Before him sat a crowd of thousands: students, leaders, social workers, business people, and even children. They were here to celebrate something that had started with a sandwich and a hoodie. Behind Daniel, a massive screen displayed the logo of the Warm Hoodie Foundation, now a global organization that helped over 1 million people across 40 countries. The foundation had built mobile shelters, launched kindness schools, provided job training for the homeless, and funded emergency relief programs in disaster zones. And yet, every time Daniel spoke about it, he always started with the same story. That rainy day, that cup of tea, that small sandwich, and the old man he thought was a stranger. Daniel looked out into the audience, and his eyes found Charles Everett sitting in the front row. His hair had grown whiter, and his walk was slower now, but his smile still carried that quiet fire of wisdom. Beside him sat Daniel's mother, now healthy and glowing, wearing a purple shawl and clapping with proud eyes full of tears. Daniel took a deep breath and began to speak. "When I was 18, he said, I had no idea how one small act of kindness could change a life. Not someone else's, but mine." He paused. "I was working in a gas station, earning just enough to feed myself and my sick mom. I didn't have much, barely enough for dinner, let alone dreams. But one cold afternoon, a stranger walked in, shivering and soaked. He asked for warmth, and I gave him my tea, my sandwich, and my only hoodie. The audience was silent. He looked like he had nothing, but he gave me everything. That man was Mr. Charles Everett, a billionaire who disguised himself to see the real hearts in this world. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel smiled. He taught me something that night. Kindness is louder than wealth, and when given freely, it multiplies. He gestured behind him. This foundation isn't about money. It's about what happens when you care enough to act, even when no one's watching. After the speech, people lined up to shake Daniel's hand. Children gave him drawings. Students asked for advice. A blind man hugged him and said, "Your voice gave me hope." But the moment Daniel waited for came quietly. Charles walked up, holding a wooden box in his hands. "I've kept this for you," Charles said. He opened the box, revealing the hoodie, washed, folded, and preserved. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. "You kept it?" he asked. Charles nodded. "It reminded me every day that real wealth lives in hearts, not banks." He handed it over. Daniel took it with shaking hands. "I thought I was giving you something small that day," he whispered. "But now I know. It was the beginning of everything." Charles smiled, tears in his eyes. "No, Daniel. You gave me something I'd forgotten I needed. Faith in humanity." That evening, Daniel sat with his mother in the same old kitchen where it all began. The walls had been repaired. The floor was new. The chairs were stronger now, but the memories were still there, stronger than ever. "You remember when we couldn't afford heating?" his mom asked, laughing softly. Daniel chuckled. "I remember wearing socks with holes and pretending I wasn't cold." They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Then she said something that made Daniel pause. "You turned a rainy day into a lifetime of sunshine for others. That's what your father would have wanted." Daniel looked at her, smiling. "I hope he's proud." She nodded. "He is. And so am I." A few months later, the Warm Hoodie Foundation opened its first International Kindness Academy in Nairobi, Kenya. A building made not of marble or steel, but love and stories. At the opening ceremony, children ran around in new hoodies, volunteers handed out books, and Daniel stood by a wall that listed names of donors and heroes. Right in the center, written in golden letters, was a simple sentence: "Kindness given freely is never forgotten." Underneath it, Daniel Carter, age 18, a sandwich and a hoodie. Daniel was now seen as one of the world's youngest and most respected humanitarian leaders. Magazines called him the Billionaire of Hearts, even though he never chased fame. He had chances to enter politics, to build companies, to move into luxury, but he never did. He stayed grounded, humble. Every month he still returned to his small hometown, sometimes to visit his old gas station, sometimes to help kids with schoolwork, always to remember who he was. One day, as he walked through a crowded train station in another city, a teenage boy ran up to him. "Are you the hoodie guy?" he asked, breathless. Daniel laughed. "Yeah, I guess I am." The boy held up a worn-out notebook and said, "My dad was homeless 5 years ago. Your project helped him get clean and find work. He got us a house. He reads your quotes every night." Daniel smiled and signed the boy's notebook. "You tell your dad he's the hero," he said. "No," the boy replied. "You gave him a second chance." That night, Daniel stood alone in his hotel room looking out at the city lights. He reached into his bag and pulled out the old hoodie. He placed it over his shoulders like a shield, a reminder, a story that still had chapters left to write. He wrote in his journal, "You don't need to be rich to be remembered. You just need to care." And so his legacy lived on, in every warm hoodie handed to a child, in every sandwich shared with the hungry, in every tear wiped away by a stranger who chose to act with love. Because once, long ago in the middle of a rainy afternoon, one 18-year-old boy gave something small, and the world gave back something infinite.